Look at your screen right now. You likely have a dozen tabs open. You are half watching this video, perhaps scrolling through a feed, or mentally drafting an email you need to send. You spend your entire day frantically pivoting from one trivial task to another. By the time the sun goes down, you are completely drained. Yet a sickening realization settles in your stomach. You have been busy for 10 hours, but you have accomplished absolutely nothing of substance. You are sprinting on a treadmill, burning massive amounts of cognitive energy just to stay in the exact same place. If your attention feels permanently shattered, your inability to focus is not a lack of willpower. It is the result of a highly sophisticated environmental conditioning. Society has trained you to equate motion with progress. You have been told that juggling 5 tasks at once makes you efficient and indispensable. But you are not being productive. You are experiencing cognitive fragmentation. Your brain is buckling under the weight of context switching, bleeding out its processing power on the friction of doing everything at once. But what if I told you that this constant state of distraction is actually a psychological defense mechanism? And to understand the dark truth of why you refuse to focus, we must examine a terrifying observation made in the opulent, aristocratic courts of 17th century France. In 1654, Blaise Pascal, a brilliant mathematician and philosopher, abandoned his scientific work to dissect the human soul. Pascal was surrounded by the French nobility, a class of people who had infinite wealth but zero responsibilities. Yet he noticed something chilling. They were utterly miserable. To avoid facing their own hollow existence, they drowned themselves in constant distraction. Gambling, theatrical shows, and endless political gossip. Pascal realized that humanity has a deep, primal terror of silence. When the noise stops, we are forced to confront our own inadequacies, our own mortality, and the terrifying weight of our actual potential. Distraction was not a mistake for these aristocrats. It was their anesthetic. To understand why your modern mind is fractured, you must recognize the illusion of multitasking. When you try to write a report while listening to a podcast and answering messages, you believe you are conquering your workload. Neurology proves otherwise. The human brain cannot process parallel, high-level cognitive tasks. It engages in micro-shifting, violently tearing your attention away from one subject and forcing it onto another, over and over again. Every time you shift, you leave a residue of your attention behind. You are intentionally diluting your own intellect. You are taking a laser beam that could cut through steel and turning it into a weak, scattered flashlight. Pascal famously wrote, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." Internalize this truth. Your multitasking is not a strategy. It is cowardly escape. You fracture your attention because you are terrified of the friction required to sit quietly and do the deep, difficult work. Acknowledging this is the easy part. But when you examine your daily habits, you will realize the true extent of your self-deception. Let's look at your reality. You sit down to tackle a massive, life-changing project. Within 3 minutes, it gets difficult. The resistance kicks in. So, what do? You open a new tab. You check your email. You seek out a micro hit of dopamine to soothe the discomfort of actual concentration. You use busy work to justify your procrastination. You clear your inbox and tell yourself you had a productive morning, while the formidable work, the work that will actually build your empire, remains untouched. You are hiding behind a smokescreen of trivialities. You are choosing the comforting illusion of motion over the brutal reality of execution. And make no mistake, the modern economy demands this fragmentation. Corporate structures and digital platforms are entirely built to fracture your focus. The collective prides itself on having 20 tabs open. They brag about how busy they are, wearing their exhaustion like a badge of honor. But a collective that cannot focus for more than 60 seconds is a collective that is easily controlled, easily manipulated, and deeply unprofitable to themselves. They consume noise so they do not have to produce value. As long as you remain addicted to the chaos of multitasking, you will remain safely anchored to mediocrity. You have a choice today. You can continue to scatter your intellect across a dozen meaningless tasks, burning out your neurology until you have nothing left to show for your life. Or you can choose to establish a parameter. You can make the definitive choice to amputate the noise. But you cannot fight this psychological battle with a simple desire to focus more. You need a framework. Here are the 3 protocols to reclaim your cognitive dominance. Protocol 1, the cognitive amputation. You must fundamentally alter your digital environment. Willpower is a finite resource. If you leave the door open to distraction, you will eventually walk through it. From this moment on, when you sit down to execute a primary task, you operate strictly on the one-window rule. Close the email client, shut down the messaging apps, hide the dock on your computer. If a tab or application does not directly serve the singular mission in front of you, you ruthlessly amputate it from your screen. By physically removing the option to pivot, you force your brain to engage with the friction of the work. Protocol 2, the 90-minute void. Deep work cannot be accomplished in 15-minute bursts between meetings. The human brain requires roughly 20 minutes just to enter a state of flow. You must architect a dedicated chamber of time. Once a day, you will block out exactly 90 minutes. During this window, your phone is placed in another room. Your notifications are silenced. You do not respond to trivial, quick questions from your colleagues. You treat this time as a sacred, impenetrable void. If you can string together just 90 uninterrupted minutes of deep, formidable focus a day, you will achieve more in a week than the oblivious accomplish in a month. Protocol 3, the capture ledger. When you enter the void, your brain will panic. It is addicted to stimulation, and it will begin throwing random, intrusive thoughts at you to break your focus. An email you forgot to send, a bill you need to pay. Do not fight these thoughts, and do not act on them. Instead, keep a physical pen and notepad next to your keyboard. When a distraction arises, write it down on the ledger and immediately return your eyes to the screen. You are offloading the mental burden. You validate the thought without sacrificing your momentum. Once you master this ledger, the internal noise begins to fade, the gates lock, and the true, terrifyingly effective work finally begins. Imagine waking up tomorrow and stepping into the void with absolute, unshakable clarity. When you stop fracturing your attention, the exhaustion disappears. You regain the processing power you were wasting on the background noise. You stop reacting to the world and you start dictating your own outcomes with sniper-like precision. The people around you will notice the shift. They will see someone who cannot be derailed by minor crises, someone who commands their environment rather than being consumed by it. When you embrace the silence of deep work, you elevate yourself above the chaos. Sovereignty of the mind is never granted. It must be quietly and ruthlessly taken. It requires a definitive act of rebellion against a world that profits from your distraction. Let's see who is actually ready to step out of the illusion. If you are finished fracturing your intellect and are ready to do the deep work, leave your mark in the comments below. Write the words, "The noise ends here." Let it be the final unbreakable contract you make with yourself today. Protecting your focus is only the first phase. To understand exactly how to stop the procrastination that prevents you from starting this deep work in the first place, you must master the psychology of momentum. Click the video right here on the screen and continue with your training. I will see you there.